as of today, Netflix, well, as of today of filming this, Netflix has released their adaptation of the Thursday Murder Club, starring Helen Mirron, Pierce Brosnan, David Tennant, just a whole stacked cast. It's supposed to be a really great murder mystery, and so we have a big question to answer. Can I solve the Thursday Murder Club before the reveal? That's right, I am going to be watching the movie for the very first time and trying to solve the big mystery before the movie reveals it. Now, this is how this is going to work. This is not a recap or review of the movie, The Thursday Murder Club. This is me watching the movie for the very first time, and at different points throughout the movie, I will hit pause, come in here, break down the different suspects, theories, and clues that I have for who I think done it. And in each time I pause and come in here and break down my theories, I will lock in my prediction for who I think done it. That way, when we get to the end of the video and we find out who done it, we can look back and see exactly how close or how far I was from getting it right. That being said, spoiler alert for the movie. We will be getting into details. And if you would like to watch the movie along with me, I will have the timestamps down below from where I hit pause. With all of that out of the way, let's jump into the Thursday Murder Club and find out, can I solve the mystery before the reveal?
There she is. Joyce, are you a nurse? Bang on target. I'm Elizabeth. Would you take a look at that for me, please?
Dear God.
'Tis a lot of blood.
All right, everyone, I have hit pause at the 30-minute mark exactly. I'm already having a ton of fun with the movie. As to be expected, considering we've only seen the first 30 minutes, a lot of what we've gotten is just like establishing the characters and like establishing what even the mystery is. So our main characters, we have Elizabeth, Joyce, Ron, and Ibrahim. They are the Thursday Murder Club. They all live in an extremely nice retirement community called Cooper's Chase. And on Thursdays, they all meet up in the puzzle room, the activity room, and they solve cold case murder mysteries. Now, Joyce is brand new to Cooper's Chase, but she is a nurse, or at least she was a nurse, and so they brought her in because she would have some real-world experience with the wounds and medical side of solving cold cases, because they have a cold case that they are currently trying to solve that they are struggling with. Now, I'm going to get into what the cold case is here in a minute, but first let's talk about the mystery that is happening in like modern day, like current times. There's an active murder mystery happening. Cooper's Chase, the retirement community, is owned by two guys, co-owned, if you will. A guy named Tony Caron and Ian. I forgot his last name. Also, I don't have a picture for Tony because the movie literally just came out this morning. So I was only able to get pictures of the cast that had like an Entertainment Weekly cast reveal from like 2 weeks ago. So yeah, two guys co-own Cooper's Chase retirement residence, a guy named Tony and a guy named Ian. This is Ian. He is like the typical rich asshole bad person. He's kind of a monster. He wants to dig up the big cemetery that is beside Cooper's Chase and turn it into luxury apartments. And then he wants to turn the main building where all the old people live and turn that into an event space. He wants to kick out all of the residents, even though they all love it there and they all have leases, which, you know, feels like a legal boundary that you're not allowed to cross, but the rich know no bounds. He's not a nice guy. The only issue for Ian, though, is that his business partner, the co-owner of the property, Tony, refuses to let him do that because Tony's Aunt Maud lives at Cooper's Chase, and he does not want her to be disturbed. In fact, he even tells Ian, and I quote, "You ain't doing nothing while my Aunt Maud is alive." They're all British too, so it's more like, "You ain't doing nothing while my Aunt Maud is alive." You know, like that. So this guy Tony is sticking up for Cooper's Chase, but his business partner Ian is dead set on tearing this place up. And he's not listening to his business partner saying no. He's going to be doing it regardless. They break ground on Monday. And he has already hired a guy to start the construction on the cemetery for Monday. And then, wouldn't you know it, Tony comes home. He's on the phone and he's arguing because he's like, I'm not letting him do this to my Aunt Maud. I apologize. I know I probably have English listeners. I'm going to stop doing the accent. I will say I am an actor. One time I played a old medieval English guy, and I kind of nailed the accent. I had a whole vocab thing. Anyway, Tony's at home. He's on the phone. He's upset. Someone is walking down his steps. We see that his house has been trashed. He looks at the person walking down the steps. We don't see who that person is because we're from their POV. Tony goes, what are you doing here? Okay, I'm gonna stop. I promise I'm stopping the voice. Tony's like, what are you doing here? Boom, hard cut to the next scene. There's police on the scene and they're like, hey, our victim has been bludgeoned to death. That's right. Tony is dead. The guy who told Ian that he's not doing anything while his Aunt Maud is alive is now dead. How convenient. Someone beat him over the head with something. We don't know what the murder weapon is, but he died from blunt force trauma. And the cops are like, the place was turned up, probably a robbery gone wrong. That's a direct quote. I can guarantee that. And my whole thing is like, a robbery gone wrong, that's not very likely. Because we know, the audience, we know what's going on. We know that he had told Ian that he cannot tear up Cooper's Chase, and Ian is not happy about that. And now he's dead. This looks very suspicious for Mr. Ian. And there are several things that point to this man being the killer right off the bat. First of all is the motive, right? Ian wants full control over the land so that he can dig it up. So the motive would be to kill Tony so that way he is the sole proprietor of the estate. Then there's also a conversation that we got with Ian and the contractor that he has hired to start doing the work on Monday, even though it's not legally allowed. That is this guy, Bogdan. And Bogdan, he is like, hey, actually, let me do the direct quote. If you mess with Tony, maybe he kills you, right? Because he talks about how Tony is a tough guy. He's a guy that's not to be messed with. And then Ian is like, I'm not worried about Tony, okay? I'm a black belt. I'm a tough guy too. I'm the kind of person that you guys should be worried about. And just Ian's whole vibe, it makes him come across like he would do anything to make sure that this construction happens. He could not care less about other people. It would not surprise me at all if he has murdered several people. But here's the thing, guys. He is way too obvious. We are 30 minutes into this movie. This is quite obviously our first red herring. Now, obviously, a red herring is a storytelling device used in mysteries to help misdirect the audience from the actual killer. So, while there's a very obvious suspect, all of us are looking at this guy going, he probably did it. Meanwhile, somewhere hidden in the background is the actual killer. So what we need to do is eliminate Ian as a suspect entirely and start looking at other characters that we have met so far in the movie. And that's kind of difficult because so far we have met quite a few characters, but no one else seems to have even a slight motive. Like, for example, we meet Joyce's daughter. Now, her daughter, I don't have a picture of her daughter. Guys, the movie came out this morning. Would you like me to draw a picture of her daughter? Would that make you happy? Here, you know what? Hold on, give me a second. She looks exactly like this. She doesn't say that to her mom, but that's kind of her general demeanor. So yeah, we meet Joyce's daughter, and she just doesn't have time for her mom. She's so busy. She works in corporate America. Like at one point, she's even like, well, I can buy you like a flat near me. Flat is the British term for apartment. But she's like, I can buy you a place near me, but not too close to me. Ha 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 ha, I hate my mom. But Joyce tells her like, no, I need to be in a place where I can make new friends, since your dad died. I mean, if I'm being completely honest with you, I think the whole point of that scene was to establish that Joyce is newly widowed and lonely and in need of new friends. And then very shortly after, she is asked to help out the Thursday Murder Club, right? So now it's like, oh, we know that she needs this place of community, and now she is getting it. And now this community that she has newly found is threatened to be taken away by this guy. Anyway, we also meet another one of the children. We meet Ron's son. Now remember, Ron is played by Pierce Brosnan. He's so cool. But his son is Jason. Jason is a celebrity. He used to be like this big championship fighter, but then he had an injury, so now he just does a bunch of like TV work. You know, like Dancing with the Stars, that kind of thing. I think in this one in particular, he mentions an ice skating show, I think. And Jason comes and visits his dad multiple times a week. It seems like he really likes Cooper Chase. He really is happy that his dad is there. He, in my eyes so far, has no reason to want to get rid of this retirement community. Then there is, of course, Tony's Aunt Maud. Remember, she is the one that Tony is so adamant about not disturbing. She loves Cooper's Chase, so he's like, you will not mess with my Aunt Maud. But now Tony's dead, and there's just Aunt Maud living there. I don't see why she would be a suspect at all, you know? Why would she want to get rid of her home? Why would she kill her nephew? And I keep bringing up that motive of like, they want to get rid of Cooper's Chase because obviously whoever killed Tony is wanting Ian's plan to go forward. Tony was the only thing standing in Ian's way, and now it has been eliminated. That's why the obvious choice for who killed him is Ian. So we've met a bunch of people, but they all live at Cooper's Chase. And why would any of them want to eliminate their home? Now, I do have two theories. The first one has to do with the cold case that the Thursday Murder Club are trying to solve from 1973. In 1973, a woman was stabbed and then thrown out of the second-story window of her apartment. She falls, she hits the ground. Her boyfriend is walking up as the burglar pushes her through the window. He watches the burglar run away. He tries to help his girlfriend, but he was shot in the war, so his leg is injured. He can't run after the burglar. His girlfriend's dead. Well, the cops show up and they not interview. It wasn't like for W Magazine, but they question the boyfriend who's named Peter Mercer. And they question Peter. He seemed like a nice guy. He said, hey, I saw this burglar kill my girlfriend, and then he ran off. They were like, seems legit. We find out that the woman actually died not from the fall, but from the knife wound. She bled out, right? So that kind of makes things suspicious because she would have had to bleed out a lot before she died. And they only have the word of the boyfriend, Peter, that there was even a burglar. Like there's nothing, basically what it boils down to is there's nothing to say that this guy Peter did not kill his girlfriend, throw her out the window, and then when the cops showed up, been like, I saw a burglar, run away. You know what I mean? Like we're just having to take his word for it. And this is back in 1973, so I guess they just didn't have like DNA or anything like that. Yeah. Shortly after he was like let go, like, yeah, obviously wasn't him. He's a nice guy. He flees, like he just like fled the country, never seen again, I guess. Now, like I said, the cops just kind of took Peter's word for it and was like, yeah, I guess it was just a burglary gone wrong, which is an interesting parallel to our current case because the cops that showed up to Tony's death said, oh, this must have been a burglary gone wrong because the house has been torn up. Now, just basic story structure kind of lets us know that when the Thursday Murder Club solve the cold case, it's probably going to lead them to a discovery or a moment, like an epiphany, that helps them solve the current case of who killed Tony. So basically what I'm trying to say is the best way for us to try to solve the current case is for us to try to solve the cold case. And I think it's pretty clear that in the cold case, the obvious suspect is the boyfriend, Peter. He's the only one that saw the burglar. He conveniently like leaves town after he's let go. But then that, like, the question that is to be answered is like, is that too obvious? Is that what the parallel is? Just like it is so clear that Ian is the most likely person to kill Tony, the boyfriend is the most likely person to kill his girlfriend. And then I'm also kind of wondering, like, I'm just throwing this out here. This feels stupid, but what if it was one of the members of the Thursday Murder Club? You know, like, what if they got the idea to tear up Tony's home before they kill Tony from this cold case that they're investigating? You know what I mean? Now, I know what you're saying, Chase. The Thursday Murder Club, they're the good guys. Why would they do that? And also, why would they want to get rid of their home? You're right. I have no idea. It's just a theory, guys. It's just one of my theories. Which brings me to my second theory, which is the theory that, I'm going to be honest, I feel awesome about. Like, I don't solve these mysteries. I don't know if you're a frequent my channel, but you know what? My track record isn't great. But this one I feel really good about. In any good story, especially a mystery story, every character that is introduced to the audience is important, right? Like, every character has a purpose to help drive the story. Just like that example we gave about Joyce and her daughter who sucks. That scene between Joyce and her daughter told us everything that we needed to know about Joyce. It also made Joyce extremely sympathetic, right? So the character of her daughter played an important part of making sure that Joyce is introduced as a fully fleshed out character. It makes sense why she joins the Thursday Murder Club, and it makes sense, you know, it just all comes together nicely. So every single character that has been introduced to us in the first 30 minutes of this movie, we need to look at and ask, why is it important that we were introduced to that character? Which brings me to Bogdan, the contractor. We learn so much about this character in a very short scene at the very beginning of the movie. We saw him in that short scene where Ian hires him to do the job, and then we haven't seen him again, right? So it's like, why did we learn so much about this character that doesn't seem to be that important? Ian wants to hire him. He pushes back. He says, won't that make Tony upset? He's a dangerous guy. You don't want to cross him. Ian says, don't worry about Tony. You just do the job and you will get a very big paycheck. And he pushes back again. He's like, well, what about the people? You're going to be kicking out all these old people. You're going to be making them homeless. That doesn't feel very ethical. They have leases. He said, who cares about these old people? Do you want a lot of money or not? And the contractor is like, well, my mother back in Poland is very sick. I do need money. I need money to help my mother. Ian is like, all you have to do is show up at work on Monday, start digging, and you will have enough money to take care of your sick mother back in Poland for life. And basically, the whole scene plays out that this man is a very good person, but the love for his sick mother overtakes his kind of ethics for people that he doesn't know, right? He's a good person. He knows that this is wrong, but he really needs that money to send back to his sick mom. Basically, what we learn in that scene is that he will do anything for his mom. Anything. Now, we could say that actually what that scene was about was learning about Ian and how terrible he is and how he's willing to screw over anybody to make a bunch of money. That's fair. But it still doesn't explain why we learned so much about this character that is seemingly just kind of a random character. So my theory, and maybe this is simplistic, maybe you guys came to this same idea, but I feel like it's genius. So here's my theory. My theory is that the contractor, in that conversation with Ian says, and I quote, "The only thing in the way is Tony. Shortly after that, Tony is dead." I think that he is willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that this job happens so that way he can get the big sum of money so that he can help his mom, including killing Tony. And I have even more kind of quote unquote evidence that would lead to this theory being very possible because Tony knows who this is, right? So when Tony is looking as the attacker is walking down the stairs, he goes, "What are you doing here?" It would make sense that he's talking to someone that he knows. Otherwise, he would be like, "Who are you?" Right? So he has to be at least familiar with the person that killed him. We get a scene between Ian and Tony where they are arguing. This is the big scene where Tony says, "You're not doing anything as long as my Aunt Maud is alive." This is the big argument. In that argument, he says, you're gonna get that Bogdan, the Polish worker, in there, aren't you? So that means he knows who Bogdan is. Now that I've said that, there are some other characters that we've met that I have not mentioned yet. We meet Elizabeth's husband, who has Alzheimer's, and he has good days and he has bad days. That's kind of the big thing. We also meet another person that's very important to Elizabeth, and that is like her best friend, Penny. Now, Penny used to be I think she started the Thursday Murder Club with Elizabeth, but she lives in the hospice wing of Cooper's Chase now. She is completely unresponsive. And we get a scene where Elizabeth goes and visits her, and her husband is there reading to her. And so we kind of get this back and forth between Elizabeth, and since Penny is not responsive, I think the husband is there as a bounce board, because this is what's really cool. And this is the big connection between the cold case and the modern case. Penny was a cop back in the day, and she was one of the cops who worked on that cold case that they're trying to solve, of the girl that got thrown through the window. And she was the only female cop on the force, and she was the only one that was so sure that Peter guy killed his girlfriend, but all the other guys on the force were he seemed like a good guy. And she was the only one that was we need to look back into him. But then of course he disappeared. So this seems like it's a major part of the story, right? I just don't know how yet, because we've only watched the first 30 minutes. So I've done enough yapping. We need to just keep watching the movie, but first I have to lock in my guess for who I think did it. Who do I think killed Tony? And I'm going to officially lock in my theory that it's Bogdan. Bogdan is the person because he needs that money to help his mom. All right, let's keep watching the movie.
Who is us? I'm sorry, how rude of me. We're the Thursday Murder Club.
Okay, guys, I hit pause at exactly the 1 hour mark of the movie, in case you're watching along. Now, the second that we kept watching the movie, from the last 30 minutes. So at 31 minutes, I was oh no, I messed up. Because we very quickly learned some information that there's actually a third secret owner of Cooper's Chase. And immediately, dude, I was bro, it's gonna be Ron's son, Jason, isn't it? Because we haven't met that many characters, and he's the only one that's a celebrity. So it's safe to say that he has a lot of money. He's the third investor. And I was oh no. And I'm already formulating the theory in my head. I'm oh man, he's actually not that great of a guy. He's a bad person. He's trying to do this up underneath his dad and making his dad homeless. And I'm doing all this. And then we just find out that no, he's not the third owner. So, I was wrong about that, but we'll get there. We'll get there. So what happens is the Thursday Murder Club has found a friend on the inside. They had made friends with a brand new officer. She's a brand new cop, but she had come to speak to them about the safety of home security or whatever. But they really took a liking to her. And now through means of gaslighting, gatekeeping, and girl bossing, they have actually gotten her on the official murder investigation. So now they have someone on the inside. And once they're able to actually get the police to involve them in some capacity, they have a lot of information to give the police, because they got Joyce's daughter, who ends up being pretty helpful, my bad, because of her skills in finance or whatever. Elizabeth had gotten some of the financial documents of the ownership of Cooper's Chase, got that to Joyce's daughter. Joyce's daughter went through it and found out some pretty big information. The first of which is that when Tony died, all of his shares went to Ian at about a value of $12 million. But that's where she also found out the information that there's a third secret investor in the property. It's a secret investor because they didn't use their name. They used a shell company named Bloomin' Marvelous. And this was the point of the movie where I was oh my God, it's going to be Jason, Ron's son. But it isn't. Turns out there is a crime boss named Bobby Tanner. And Bobby Tanner is the third secret investor. The cops are looking into Bobby Tanner because at the crime scene where Tony was murdered, they found, the place was destroyed, but they found a picture on the floor of Tony with Bobby Tanner. So they do some investigation. They're, questioning Ian about his involvement. That's where we got the information that Bobby Tanner is the third secret investor. But Ian is like, I thought he was dead. No one's seen him in years. But what's even crazier, dude, is that in this picture of Tony with Bobby Tanner, the crime boss, I don't know if England has the mafia. I don't know if that's a purely American institution. But it's essentially like he's kind of like a mafia boss. He's a crime boss. In that picture with the two of them, there's an arm of the person taking the picture, and that arm has the tattoo that's the same tattoo that Jason has. And so now the cops, Donna, and actually, hold on. I think I have Donna and Daniel. They are like, oh my God, Jason has something to do with it, because they also found out that Jason used to do odd jobs for Tony and Bobby. Because after his fighting career ended from an injury, there was a little period of time before he was doing like TV work where he needed money. So he was doing odd jobs for this mafia boss and Tony, the guy who died. And who knows what odd jobs mean when you're working with a crime boss? That could mean killing people. It could mean like beating up people for money. In fact, I think it exclusively means that. So now the cops have a running theory that Ian hired Jason to kill Tony. So the cops are following that lead. They let Elizabeth know about this information, but Elizabeth does not tell Ron yet. I think she's afraid of, telling him that his son might be the murderer. Also, I feel the need to say that there's like a running subplot that Elizabeth, played by Helen Mirron, is like a spy, like a James Bond MI6 spy, or at least she was when she was younger. I don't know. We'll see. Now, another piece of information that we get from the Thursday Murder Club is that there is absolutely no way that Ian could have been the one who killed Tony in his house. Now, that does not mean that he did not hire someone to do it. It just means that he could not have done it physically, because they timed out the drive, and there's no way that he would have been able to drive to Tony's house at the time of death, which was at 11:24 a.m. on the dot. Ian was like 5 minutes before that seen at Cooper's Chase by all of the residents. Now, there's also a running theory from the police and the Thursday Murder Club that Bobby Tanner, the crime boss, could be the person who killed Tony, right? But the big thing is that no one's seen him in years. Ian was like, I thought he was dead. But we know that he's alive because Aunt Maud, Tony's aunt at Cooper's Chase, received flowers saying, sorry for your loss, signed BT, Bobby Tanner. So I have a hard time believing that he's the killer, considering we have not met him or seen him. We've only heard about this mythical crime boss. And also, why would you send flowers to Aunt Maud saying sorry for your loss if you're the one that killed, the nephew? And then something even crazier happens, right? Elizabeth is walking through the cemetery trying to get back to the Cooper's Chase building, and a guy walks up to her and goes, "Don't wake the dead." Now, I don't know what the fuck that means. I'm assuming it's a threat, being like, hey, stop investigating Tony's death. But also, hey, maybe it's a clue. Maybe it's like, hey, don't wake the dead. That's the clue to solve the mystery. So I guess we'll find out about that. Who do we think killed Tony? Last time we locked in Bogdan. Now, we have not heard or seen anything from that guy in a long time. And I would say the entire 30-minute chunk that we just watched, plus some, because we only saw him at the very beginning of the movie. So I'm not certain that I was right with that theory, even though I thought I was cooking. Now, unless, of course, he was the person in the cemetery who spoke to Elizabeth and said, don't wake the dead or whatever. But I don't know. We couldn't see the guy's face. She couldn't see the guy's face. So we have no way of knowing who that was at this point. And also, one thing that really doesn't fit with my motive that I have for him is that everything that he's doing for the love of his elderly, sick mother. So would that guy really start threatening an elderly woman at a retirement community. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't play in line with that motif, that motive, that character arc of he's a good person. He just does, like, he's having to do bad things out of love for his mother. And that doesn't make sense that he would then start threatening someone who could potentially look like his mother. Can you guys tell I watch a lot of Criminal Minds? Like, if this was an episode of Criminal Minds, the guy that Matthew Gray Gobbler or whatever plays Spencer would have been like, typically with a serial killer of this nature, they would not attack victims that are similar to the one person that they care about, their mother. So it doesn't really make sense. That was, hey, if you've watched Criminal Minds, that was a pretty good impression. Moving on, Ron's son, Jason, has become a major suspect in the eyes of the police, and also Elizabeth knows about it, and so I'm sure she's kind of suspicious of him as well. All that tells me is that if this is the cops' kind of prime suspect right now, we do not need to lock him in, because one of two things is going to happen. Either he will be the killer, and this is going to be one of the most disappointing mysteries of all time, or two, there's going to be like a big like fake out where it's like, we're certain it's him. And then one little thing doesn't add up and they're like, wait, it's not him, it's blank, you know? So just through like the process of elimination, there's not really that many people it could be, logically. I mean, we've met Joyce's daughter, definitely not her. She hasn't even showed up in the movie. She's just on the phone. She was in the movie at the beginning, but now she's just talking on the phone. It's not the cops. Probably. That'd be a pretty cool twist, actually. We did meet, and I don't have either of their pictures because I can't find them, but Elizabeth's friend Penny, who is in hospice, she's like in a coma, and her husband who reads to her. I don't know why it would be either of them. One is physically incapable of committing a murder, and the husband, why would he want his wife to be kicked out of her hospice care? You know what I mean? It just doesn't make sense. And then we've met like Aunt Maud. But again, I don't know why she would kill her nephew and then get rid of her home. So I think I just kind of have to stay with Bogdan because I don't know who else would even work. I'm really worried that I'm missing something pretty big and that I'm going to look stupid. But it's kind of the only logical answer I have right now. So I'm going to lock him in once again. Let's go keep watching the movie.
Ticket cold cases. It's a club about murder. Does sound a bit bonkers.
In breaking news,
There's been a murder. An actual murder.
Okay, guys. I hit pause at exactly 1 hour, 22 minutes, and 31 seconds. Exactly. And the reason I hit pause there is because we get a huge revelation that just, oh God. Okay. You know what? It's time. We need to lock in. We need to lock in, dude, or else we're not going to solve this. So it's time for the big guns. That's right, baby. We got the hat on. Things have taken a turn. I'm not going to lie. I'm worried. I thought I had this one in the bag. I was like, it could be no one other than Bogdan. And now it looks like it might be someone other than Bogdan. Okay, I don't even know where to begin. So there's a big protest. Ron is leading a big protest because that's what he used to do back in the day. He was a union man. And so he's leading a big protest. They've made like all of the people that live in Cooper's Chase have made a big barricade in front of the cemetery. It's Monday morning. Ian is showing up with Bogdan and a bunch of tractors, and it's time to break ground. But they're like, we're not letting you through. And so like Ian is like throwing a tantrum, and he's going through the crowd of old people, and they're kind of pushing him around, and he's yelling at them. And then Ian just drops dead. Just dies right there in front of everybody. I mean, I don't know what's more ironic than dropping dead in front of the cemetery that you were trying to dig up, you know? And so now we have another death on our hands. But before we even get into that, so like while Ian is dealing with the protesters, he tells Bogdan, he's like, sneak around back with a shovel and start digging. We're starting right now whether they like it or not. And he's like, I'm not going to be able to do much work by myself with just one shovel. And he's like, did I ask you how much work you're going to get done? No, I need you to start getting to work. So Bogdan runs around, he sneaks back there, he starts digging. Elizabeth sees him do this and sneaks back there. She's super cool. She's badass. She pretends to be the same name as his mom, which I can at least say I called that. we get this whole scene. It's really fun. You should watch the movie if you're not watching the movie. Gets to the point where he trusts her through manipulation mostly, but he trusts her. And so she asks him the question, did Ian ask you to kill Tony for him? And Bogdan says no. And even if he did ask, I'd still say no. And guys, frankly, I believe him. He seems very sincere when he says that. Because then we get a scene later on where he gives Elizabeth some major evidence, and it's like he's participating in the investigation, and he's one of the good guys. So I'm pretty devastated because that was kind of all I got. Back to Ian being dead. Turns out he died from a fentanyl overdose. It was injected or administered into him moments before he died, which means that it was one of the people in the protest that injected him with it and killed him, which means it could have been any of the old people that live in Cooper's Chase. Plus Jason was there. He was there with his dad. You will not break ground on this cemetery. And like he even had like a confrontation with Ian at one point, but it gets crazier than this. Because since you think that Ian is dead, or we don't think Ian's dead, but you would think because he's dead, well, all of our troubles are over. Cooper's Chase is saved. We could all go home. No, it's worse now. It's way worse now because Ian was the only person that could stop the construction from taking place. It is going forward. It is moving forward. The only person that could stop it is one of the owners of the property. And both of them are dead. Ian and Tony. And then the third secret investor, which is Bobby Tanner or whatever, he hasn't been seen for years. They thought he was dead. So now they're screwed. And then Jason gets arrested by the cops for the murder of Tony because the cops found out that Ian paid off some of Jason's old debts when he, quit fighting. And so as repayment for him kind of taking care of those debts, Jason would do odd jobs for him. He looks super suspicious, and I can understand why the cops would think it's him. I'm still adamant that it's not him. But Chase, if you think he's innocent, and we found out that Bogdan is innocent, then who did it? I have no idea. But don't worry, it gets crazier. Because remember when I said that Bogdan gives Elizabeth some evidence to help with the investigation? What if I told you that that evidence was a dead body? He was digging in the graveyard, and he found a skeleton on top of a casket. And Elizabeth is like, why would someone dig up a grave just to put bones on bones? And he goes, to hide a body. So then the cops run a DNA test, and you will not fucking believe whose skeleton this is that they found. Peter Mercer. Do you remember that name? I didn't for a second. That's the name of the boyfriend in the cold case from 1973. What the fuck is he doing here? I totally forgot about the cold case. They hadn't mentioned it in a while. I totally forgot all about it. And then they said the name Peter Mercer, and I was like, who? And then I looked down at my notebook, and I was like, oh shit. And that's also where we hit pause. So I don't even know anything after that fact. So now I've got like a million questions, right? How long has this guy been dead? Who killed him? And how in the world is this connected to the current killings of Tony and Ian? Like, was Peter killed back in 1973? Or was this a recent killing? Man, this is a great mystery, dude, because I thought it was pretty simple, and then I was like, okay, I think I got this. I have no idea what's going on. That's why I'm wearing my detective hat. It speaks to me like Voldemort on the back of that dude's head in the first Harry Potter movie. It's like whispering stuff in my ear. It's like, Chase, look in the old lady. It was the old lady, Chase. It was the spy, Elizabeth. But I have to tell him no. Can't be it. Also, before we start getting into theories, if I can manage to come up with one other thing does happen. Elizabeth gets flowers put in her room, and the flowers have a note that says, your final warning, back off. So I'm assuming that this is the same person who threatened her in the cemetery that night is now giving her another threat via flowers. Kind of a nice way to make a threat, It's like if anyone ever sent me an edible arrangement with the note, your ass is grass, white boy, I'd be like, it's the thought that counts. Okay, so now let's figure this out, because I do have a theory. I was kidding. I have a theory. I just don't know. We're going to try to work this out. Okay, so what we know, the big game changer, is that now we have another body. We have the skeleton of the boyfriend from the cold case in 1973. Now, we brought this up at the beginning of this video where I said basic story structure tells us that the cold case and the modern case, they're going to find a way to combine. And now that is happening, but I just don't understand how they combine, right? The only connection that we have to the body of Peter Mercer is the cop that worked on that case in 1973, which is Elizabeth's friend, Penny. Now, Penny is comatose. She's in hospice. She is not capable of killing Tony and Ian, right? She does have her husband with her. So this is my Hail Mary, only thought. What if her husband, I think his name is John, what if her husband has always protected her, right? Just like how he's beside her bed, reading her stories every single day and holding her hand. He's always been there for her. And when that case was happening in 1973, and she was so upset because she felt like they just let the killer go, what if he took it upon himself to help her by killing that guy, killing Peter Mercer, and he buried it in the cemetery? Because I was racking my brain. I was like, okay, right now we've been looking at one main motive. That motive being, why would you kill Tony and Ian? Or I don't even know. Why would you kill Tony? You would kill Tony if you wanted the cemetery dug up. But why would you kill Ian? You would kill Ian because you didn't want the cemetery dug up. And why wouldn't you want the cemetery dug up? Well, one, it's their home. That's where they live. If we're going with this theory that it could be this John guy, it's where his wife is in hospice care. But another reason why you would not want someone to dig up a cemetery is because if you hid a body in that cemetery. So then, this is where this theory doesn't even really work, though, because then why would he kill Tony, right? Why would you kill the guy that is the only thing standing in the way from this guy digging up the cemetery? It just doesn't make any sense. And then also, I guess I can understand why you would kill Ian, because you're like, well, if I kill Ian, all of this is going to go away. And then maybe you just didn't know that now you've made it even harder to stop the process of digging up the cemetery, right? That's the only, oh, Jesus, dude. Because I thought I nailed it with Bogdan, and then now I was like, the only possible character that we have met other than the main four of the Thursday murder mystery, Jesus Christ. I don't know, dude. Because here's another thing. Why in the world in 1973, say he killed this Peter guy in 1973, why would he bury him in the cemetery of the retirement community that doesn't even exist yet? Because Cooper's Chase wasn't a retirement community until much later, you would think, right? Because if it was founded by Ian and Tony, then, he's a lot younger than these cats. So why would you bury him in the plate I'm getting flustered because there's only 30 minutes of the movie left, which means that this is my last chance to lock in the correct guess if I want to get this mystery right. And I'm more confused now than I have been. I thought I was so certain. The only thing I can think of logically, because it's the only character we've met that even makes sense, is Elizabeth's friend Penny, her husband John. But I can't even make that line up with the motives. Because say he killed the Peter Mercer guy, why would he bury him at that cemetery? And then why would he kill the only person standing in Ian's way from digging up the cemetery? You would think with all of the mysteries and stuff that I do for this channel, I would get better. That does not seem to be the case. I do have one piece of, I guess you could call it evidence that helps that theory. Whereas it seemed like a throwaway line at first that didn't matter. But now with this new theory, maybe it does make sense. There's a scene where Elizabeth is talking to her friend Penny, but obviously she is unresponsive, but her husband is sitting there. And Elizabeth says, she's talking about the cold case that the Thursday Murder Club are working on. And she's like, you would have loved this one, Penny. Like, I'm even surprised. I don't know why you didn't bring this one to us when you were a part of the club. And it's just like a throwaway line. But now, because we're kind of pulling on this thread, it's like, well, maybe the reason that she did not, oh God, but that doesn't even make sense either, because then that would mean that she knows that her husband killed the Peter Mercer guy. Maybe she killed him, but that doesn't make sense, because then why would she can't kill Ian? Is the big twist going to be that she's not actually in a coma? I mean, I'd be surprised. I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to give up, even though I really want to. No, I'm going to, it's got to be, it could also be, okay, I've overlooked a major character. And it's occurring to me right now. I didn't even put him up on the wall. Elizabeth's husband, who has Alzheimer's, we've been seeing a little bit of him throughout the movie. Could he have been doing it? And because he's having a really hard time with his memory, he doesn't even remember doing it? Why would he kill Peter Mercer? I don't even think that he would have known. Guys, the only person logically that it can be is Elizabeth's friend Penny, her husband John, I guess. That's who I'm locking in. I feel like I'm cheating a little bit because I don't have a motive. I don't have like any evidence backing it up. I'm just kind of like, I've eliminated everyone else. So it's gotta be this guy. So yeah, I'm locking it in. Let's go watch the rest of this movie and see if we figured it out.
Joyce, Ibrahim, Ron. We need the Thursday Murder Club.
All right, guys, I don't know. I don't know whether to consider this a win or what, because I mean, I think we all witnessed my unraveling in the last part. We kind of got it though, in a weird way. So basically what we find out is that Bogdan killed Tony. It was an accident. Turns out they were doing this kind of scheme. Tony and Ian and the mob boss or whatever, the crime boss, Bobby Tanner, where they would bring in Polish workers or just immigrant workers and then take their passports from them for safekeeping. Bogdan really wanted to go visit his mom one last time before she maybe passed, but they would not give him his passport back. So he confronted Tony. Tony dies accidentally. Tony attacked him and he defended himself, and Tony ended up dead. So that explains that death. Ian and Peter Mercer. No. Ian. Okay, I don't even know where to begin with this. Peter Mercer, the body that we found in the ground from the cold case in 1973, was killed by Penny, Elizabeth's friend Penny, who is now comatose. She killed him back in 1973 because she knew that he was guilty and she didn't want him to get away with killing his girlfriend scot-free. She killed him. Her husband, John, helped her hide the body in the cemetery of the church that he would go to, which became Cooper's Chase. Okay, so that explains that. Then, modern times, when all of this talk of the cemetery getting dug up is happening, in order to protect his wife from not being found out about killing a guy back in 1973, he decided to kill Ian at the protest in front of the cemetery. Because I guess in his eyes, he was like, if I kill Ian, all of this goes away. So the reason that I was right and wrong is because I thought that one person did all three deaths, all three killings, but it was actually three people that did three different deaths, and they just all somehow managed to come together, which is awesome. Bogdan killed Tony, John killed Ian, Penny killed Peter Mercer in 1973. So technically, because I accused both Bogdan and the husband of Penny, John, I think this one might count as a win. I didn't get it all together, and actually, maybe it doesn't count as a win. I was close. I had the pieces. I just didn't put them together into the nice puzzle. You know what I mean? Guys, this was a ton of fun. I wanted to do a quick trying to solve this movie because it just came out. I had a ton of fun watching it. I really enjoyed it. I want to read the books. I've heard that the books are amazing. There's several of them. But this was such a fun mystery. I can only imagine in a book where you have like way more time to lay out suspects and clues and stuff, it could be even better. So I'm excited for that. Thank you guys for watching. Links down below for Patreon and everything. If you're a fan of Pretty Little Liars, over on the Patreon, we've been doing a thing where every week we break down a chapter of the first Pretty Little Liars book. It's been a ton of fun over there. Yeah. All right, dope.